Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are going to do something a little bit dangerous.
Yeah.
We're going to take a look at your bank account, your investments, your entire financial philosophy, really, and we're going to strip away the feel-good narrative.
I think I know where this is going.
We're digging into a piece by Jason Koeh titled, "Is Your Money Growing or Leaking?" And I have to be honest with you, this one actually made me feel a little bit ill when I first read it.
It is certainly not a comforting read. It's not one of those, skip the latte and you'll be a millionaire articles. It's a systemic critique of how the middle class handles wealth.
Right. And usually when we talk about money, we talk about it with a lot of emotion. Follow your dreams or save for a rainy day. But KOH comes in with a very cold, very specific lens.
The engineering mindset.
Exactly. He calls it the engineering mindset.
He's asking us to stop looking at our finances as a collection of hopes and dreams and instead view them as a machine, a literal engine.
And the premise is terrifyingly simple. You have inputs.
And you have outputs.
Correct. The input is your life energy. It's the hours you work, the stress you endure, the time you spend away from your family.
You convert that life energy into money, and you pour it into this financial machine, your savings, your investments. Ideally, the machine processes that fuel and produces an effective output.
Increased purchasing power, freedom.
But the source argues that for most of us, there is a massive bug in the system.
A critical failure.
A critical failure, yes. We pour the fuel in decades of savings, but the machine just leaks. We reach age 50 or 60, look at the output, and realize that while the number of dollars might be higher, the actual freedom, the goods we can buy,
hasn't increased. Or worse.
In many cases, it has actually decreased.
That is the leak. And our mission today is to find where that leak is coming from. Because if you don't fix a machine, it doesn't matter how hard you work.
No, or how much fuel you pour in. You are just feeding the leak.
So let's start with the first big failure point the source identifies. He uses a term that sounds almost like a legal charge. Financial abandonment. To me, abandonment sounds like, I don't know, leaving a baby on a doorstep. What does he mean in a financial context?
He is referring to the buy and hold mentality that has been drilled into us. You know the narrative.
Oh, yeah. Time in the market beats timing the market.
Exactly. Just buy a diversified fund, set up an auto debit, and, close your eyes for 30 years.
That's the golden rule. That's what every financial guru tells you to do. It's passive investing.
And KOH argues that this passive approach is effectively abandonment. He explains why using a concept from physics,
which is
entropy.
Okay, let's unpack this. I have not thought about entropy since high school physics.
Simply put, entropy is the tendency of any closed system to move toward disorder. If you don't apply external force, things just fall apart. Order degrades into chaos. Think about a garden.
Okay, a garden.
If you plant a beautiful, perfectly designed garden and then you abandon it, you don't water it, you don't weed it, you just walk away for 5 years, what do you come back to?
You come back to a jungle, weeds everywhere, the flowers are dead, maybe some invasive species has taken over. It's chaos.
Exactly. The financial market is an ecosystem subject to extremely high entropy. It is chaotic by nature. Macroeconomic winds shift, industries die, currencies fluctuate, inflation spikes.
Geopolitical tensions rise, all of it.
Right. If you just park your money and ignore it, treating it like a statue rather than a garden, you are leaving your wealth defenseless.
So he's saying that the whole set it and forget it strategy essentially leaves your money without an immune system.
That is the perfect analogy. Without active oversight, your wealth has no defense. KOH argues that true investing isn't a one-time decision. It's a continuous cycle of two specific engineering actions.
Okay, what are the two moves? If I want to stop abandoning my money, what do I actually need to do?
The first is asset identification. And this goes deeper than just, I like this brand or my neighbor said this stock is hot.
Right.
It is a logical, almost cold look at value creation. Does this asset actually generate value based on the underlying logic of the market?
Okay, and the second?
The second is dynamic management. And this is where people get tripped up.
Dynamic management sounds a lot like day trading to me. And I'll be honest, most of our listeners do not have time to sit in front of 6 monitors watching stock tickers all day.
And it is not about day trading. It's about operating the capital. Think about driving a car.
Okay.
You don't jerk the wheel left and right every second. That's chaos. But you also don't lock the steering wheel in place, put brick on the gas pedal, and climb into the back seat to take a nap.
Which is basically what buy and hold tells you to do.
Exactly. You have to steer, you have to adjust for road conditions. If the macro environment shifts, say interest rates skyrocket or a war breaks out, You have to make structural adjustments. You have to hedge. If you don't, you crash.
So we need to be operators, not just parkers. But I want to push back a little bit here.
Go for it.
Because I think a lot of people are thinking, okay, sure, entropy is bad, but historically, the market goes up. As long as I'm getting my 5% or 7% average return, I'm beating the weeds.
That is the most dangerous assumption of all.
Why?
Because of the math of real returns. This is the section where KOEH really breaks out the calculator. He uses data from Malaysia as a case study, the Malaysia model, but the math applies everywhere.
He calls the official numbers a warm deception, which is such a great, creepy phrase.
It really is. It feels cozy, but it's lying to you.
So let's walk through this math slowly because this is where the leak is usually hidden.
Okay, so imagine you have a target investment. You put $100,000 in, and at the end of the year, the app says, congratulations, you made a 5% return.
I'm popping champagne. That's $5,000. I made money.
Did you, though?
Yeah.
Now we have to put on our engineer hats and look for the friction. First deduction, official inflation, the CPI. In his model, let's peg that at minus 2.0%.
Okay, so my purchasing power only grew by 3%. I'm still in the green. I'm not panicking yet.
But we aren't done. Next, you have the government slice. Tax and compliance costs, stamp duties, withholding taxes. The source estimates this friction at roughly minus 0.5%.
Okay, so I'm down 2.5%. It's getting thinner, but it's still positive.
Now we get to the silent killer, something the source calls friction losses.
Friction losses. This sounds like something that happens in an engine, not a bank account. What is that?
It is the cost of moving parts. It includes management fees. If you are in a mutual fund or an ETF, you are paying an expense ratio. But it also includes the bid-ask spread.
Break that down for us.
It's the tiny difference between the buying price and the selling price of a stock. Every time you transact, you lose a tiny percentage to the market maker. Then you have the opportunity cost of idle cash money sitting there doing nothing.
And those little nibbles add up.
They add up significantly. The source calculates this system inefficiency at roughly minus 1.0%.
So let's do the final tally. We started with a headline number of 5%, minus 2% for inflation, minus 0.5% for taxes, and minus 1% for friction.
You are left with a real net return of 1.5%.
1.5%. That is barely moving the needle.
It is effectively a rounding error, and we haven't even mentioned the biggest variable of all. It's lifestyle inflation.
Oh, right, because my grocery bill definitely went up more than 2% last year.
Exactly. The official CPI might be 2%, but the perceived inflation, healthcare, education, insurance, is usually much, much higher. So effectively, even though your account balance went up by 5%, your actual ability to capture future resources, your real wealth,
basically stayed flat. Or worse, it shrank.
yes,
So that 5% win on the screen is actually a loss in the real world. That is the definition of a leaking system.
a failed engineering project.
Yeah.
If you built an engine that consumed that much fuel and produced that little motion, you would scrap it.
This makes me look at my portfolio very differently. But let's pivot. Because usually when people realize the stock market is a leaky bucket, they run to the one asset class that everyone agrees is safe. Yes.
Real estate.
Bricks and mortar. The holy grail.
Right. The logic is simple. I can touch it. It's solid. People always need homes. And the best part, passive income. You buy the house, you collect the rent, you retire on a beach. And KOEH absolutely takes a sledgehammer to that belief. He argues that real estate is actually a high-maintenance, low-liquidity operational project.
He highlights two major risks here. The first one is a concept he calls dynamic displacement.
This is a brilliant way to frame it.
It sounds like a sci-fi term, dynamic displacement.
And it does, but the concept is very grounded. He argues that the value of a property isn't in the bricks. The bricks are just a shell. The value is anchored in human flow.
Where the people are.
Exactly. Where they move, where they work, where they spend money. But human flow is dynamic. It's like water. It shifts. A new highway opens up 5 miles away. A commercial district shifts because a new mall was built 2 towns over.
A major factory closes down.
Right. Suddenly the hot spot isn't hot anymore.
But your property is still there. The house isn't broken.
No, the house is fine. But it has become what the source calls inefficient inventory. The economic system around it has failed. The human flow is displaced somewhere else.
And unlike a stock, you can't just sell it with a click. You are stuck.
Precisely. You are the last shop open in a ghost town. And then there's the second risk, the yield trap.
This one hits home for anyone chasing rental income. The source mentions that in the Malaysia context, you might see a gross residential yield of 4% to 6%, which again sounds fantastic.
It sounds great on paper, but we have to apply that engineering mindset again. Inputs versus effective outputs. Start with that 6% gross number. Now start deducting.
Mortgage interest is the obvious one.
That's the big one. But let's talk about sinking funds.
Sinking funds. I feel like most people don't even have a sinking fund.
Which is exactly the problem. A sinking fund is money you must set aside for the inevitable death of the building's components. The roof will fail. The elevators will break.
The exterior needs repainting.
Always. If you aren't saving for it every single month, you aren't making a profit. You are just deferring a future liability.
That's a really important distinction. The cash in your hand isn't profit. It's just unspent repair money.
Exactly. Then add in vacancy costs, the months it sits empty between tenants, add in agent fees, add in the stress of managing tenants. The source argues that when you strip all that away, the true cash flow net value is often tiny.
It sounds like it might even be negative.
Often it is. He argues it frequently fails to cover perceived inflation, the actual rising cost of living. So you own this massive expensive asset, and the net result might actually be a wealth leak.
It's the difference between an asset that feeds you and an asset that eats.
Correct.
So we've ruled out passive stock investing. We've questioned real estate. It feels like the system is rigged against the individual.
Well, that leads us to the most philosophical and, frankly, the most disturbing part of the source material.
Oh.
We've talked about market friction. We've talked about real estate costs. But then KOEH asks a question that feels a bit more sinister. Who is sharing your compound interest?
This is the section on sovereign consciousness.
Sovereign consciousness. It implies that you need to be the ruler, the sovereign of your own money.
Because if you aren't the king, someone else is.
Yes. If you don't act as the sovereign of your wealth, your capital becomes fuel for someone else's growth. Specifically, he talks about corporate dilution.
This is getting into the weeds of how companies are run. What does he mean by dilution here?
When you buy a stock, you own a piece of a company, a share of the profits. But companies have ways of creating more shares, which makes your slice of the pie smaller.
Okay, give me an example from the source.
He mentions equity dilution through RSP's internal stock reward plans. This is where companies issue new stock to reward their employees or management.
Which sounds nice for the employees. Here, have some stock options.
It is great for them, but where does that stock come from? The company mints it. They create new shares. So the company might be making the same amount of profit, but now it's divided among more shares, so your share earns less.
So the management gets richer, and my slice gets thinner.
Basically, it's like ordering a pizza for 4 people, and then 2 more guys just show up and grab a slice, but you paid for the whole pie.
Right. And the other trap he mentions is capital structure traps, specifically private placements.
Yes. This is when a public company sells a large block of shares directly to a private investor, usually at a discount. Now, sometimes this is good. It raises cash for expansion.
But not always.
Not always. The source warns that often these placements are just management transferring risk to investors. They might be raising cash to pay off bad debt or just keep the lights on.
So they're diluting my value to cover up their own failures.
But because it happens behind the scenes, you don't see a loss in your account immediately. You just own a smaller, less valuable piece of the company. As the source says, invisible dilution is more deadly than visible losses.
That's a key phrase. Invisible dilution is more deadly than visible losses. Because if I see a stock drop 10%, I panic. I react.
But if you get diluted 10% over 2 years, you might not even notice. You just think the market is slow.
You don't realize you were being harvested.
Being harvested. It's a chilling way to put it. And that is why sovereign consciousness matters. You have to be awake at the wheel.
This all loops back to the conclusion of the source, which I found surprisingly moving for a financial article. He mentions writing a book called Slave to Money, or New Kai, and he poses this big question. Why does money earned through sweat often fail to buy financial freedom?
It is the ultimate tragedy of the middle class. We work so hard, we trade our time for money.
Yeah.
But the answer the source gives is simple and brutal.
What is it?
Time itself does not generate wealth.
Oof. That goes against everything we are taught. Time in the market, right? Compound interest requires time.
Time is a necessary component, yes. It is a multiplier, but it isn't the generator. The source argues that only correct decisions plus continuous management generate wealth. Time just amplifies whatever system you have running.
So if your system is efficient, time makes you rich.
But if your system has a leak, If entropy is winning, if friction is high, if you're being diluted, time just makes the hole bigger. It drains you dry.
That really changes how I look at my savings. He says, money is life.
Yes. He doesn't mean money is the goal of life. He means that every dollar you have sits there as a representation of your past life. You exchanged your hours, your stress, your time away from your children to get that capital.
You're looking at frozen time.
Precisely. Therefore, treating it with financial abandonment, just tossing it into an account and hoping for the best, is disrespectful to your own life.
Disrespectful to your own life, that hits hard. It's not just about greed or wanting a yacht. It's about honoring the effort you put in to earn it.
Exactly. The call to action here isn't to become a day trader. It's to stop leaving wealth to probability. Stop treating capital as a dead object. Treat it as a living thing that needs management.
He needs an engineer.
It needs an engineer.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a challenge. We've talked about entropy, friction, dilution. It's a lot to process.
It is. But try this exercise. Look at your personal finances right now, not as a bank account, but as a rigorous engineering system.
Measure the inputs of your hard work versus the effective outputs of real purchasing power. If you were the CEO of a company and you saw a machine that consumed that much fuel but produced that little output,
Would you keep running it? Or would you fire the engineer in charge?
and since that engineer is usually you, that's a very tough question to answer.
It is the only question that matters.
That's it for today's deep dive. Go audit your systems, people. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.